Grade 1 workpack, pages 7 to 8. This was set as part of week 2 tasks. First question asks you to write down this number in figures. So I've got 7 in the thousands column and 25. So I'm going to put 25 in the correct place. I've got to fill in the gap with a 0, and I can see that my answer is going to be 7025. Next one, we're asking to write the number in words. So I'm going to write it out using my place value columns, and it makes life a little bit easier because I can see that I've got 9 thousands, I've got 4 hundreds, and I've got 5 tens, which is 50. Question 1C asks you to round this number to the nearest whole number units. So look to the number to the right. If it's 5 or more, we round it up, so the 8 becomes a 9, and we don't forget the 2 in the tens column. Question D, write this number to the nearest thousand, units, tens, hundreds, thousands. So I'm rounding it to the nearest thousand. It's either going to be 7,000 or it's going to be 8,000. I'll look to the number next to it. If it is 5 or more, I round it up. Otherwise, I round it down. It's a 3, which means my answer is rounded down to 7,000. Question 2. Write down the value of the 3 in the number. So I've got units, tens, hundreds, thousands. 3. Question 3, write down the 3, the value of 3 in 16.35. So I can see that this is in the tens column. So it is 3 tenths. Question 4, 90 divided by 10. 90 divided by 10 is 5. Now I'm asked to put these in order of size. I always write them out in a column, making sure the decimal point is in the same place. And I do that, I put my decimal point in first. Then I check, and I can see that they fill in the gaps with zeros, so they all have 4 digits. Look at the first column, and I can see I've got 3 zeros and a 1. So the 1 must be the biggest, so that goes at the end, because I'm starting with the smallest. Then I move on to the next column, and I can see the 0 is the smallest, so that goes at the beginning, and I cross it out once I've used it. Then comparing the next numbers, 2.8 is the next smallest, and then it is 4.71. Right, write 7 tenths as a decimal. Tenths, and tens is the first column after the decimal point, so it is 0.7. Okay, let's move on to the next question, question number 5. Put them in order of size, starting with the smallest. So I can see that I've got, if I put them all into order as a column, I can see this is the smallest number. Then the one beginning with the number 3, then 5,713, and finally 7,135. Let's move on to part B. I write them, each number, making sure the decimal points are in the same place. Fill in the gap. Zeros. Compare. They're all the same. It doesn't tell me anything new. I've got 3 3s and a 4, so I know that 4 is the biggest number, and I cross it out because I've used it. Move on to the next number. I can see I've got 2 5s and a 4, so that number must be the smallest. Cross it out when I've used it. Compare the next. I can see the 0 is the smallest, so 0.35, and then finally 0.34. 454. Question 6 tells us there's 4 cards and there's a number on each card, and it asks us to write down a 4-digit number. So I'm using all of them, and it has to be even, and I can only use each card once. So if it's even, it must end in either a 2 or a 4. So I'm going to choose to end it in a 2. I could have 4, 5, 1. In fact, I could have 5, 4, 1, 2. I could have 4, 1, 5, 2. All would be acceptable. Then if I look at the next numbers, I could have it ending in 4, and I could have 1, 2, 5, 4, 2, 1, 5, 4, or I could have 5, 2, 1, 4, and I can have 5, 1, 2, 4. Doesn't matter which number I use, as long as the number uses all 4 cards and it ends in a 2 or 4. Then it asks you to write down all the 2-digit numbers that can be used using these cards. So I'm going to start with the number 4, so I can match the 4 with the 5, the 4 with the 2, and the 4 with the 1. Then I'm going to move on to the next number. I can match the 5 with the 4, the 5 with the 2, and the 5 with the 1. Then I'm going to move on to the number 2, and I can match the number 2 with the 4, with the 5, and with the 1. And finally, I can start with the number 1, match it with the 4, the 5, and the 2. I can't double them up because it says there's only 4 cards, so I can't write 44 or 55, 22 or 11. So those are all my answers. Question 7, I'm ordering starting with the smallest. So remember, I write them all out in a column. Making sure I line them up, filling in the gaps with zeros. I can see that this number is the smallest, so I'll write it down first. Taking care to make sure I write it down correctly, I scan again. I can see my next number is going to be between these two. So I'll look at the next column, and that is the smallest, so it's 3007, cross it out. 3333 is the next smallest. The last two numbers begin with a 4, so I check the next column, and the 0 is the smallest, and 435. Right, we're going to write these in order of size, again starting with the smallest. So 3.7, 5.62, I'm lining up that decimal point. Fill in the gaps with zeros. I can see the 14 is quite clearly the largest number, so that goes right at the end. The 0.7 is the smallest because it's the only one with a 0 in that column. Then I've got 3.7 and finally 5.62. Part C asks you to write 9/10 as a decimal. Tenths is the first column after the decimal point. And then let's complete the final question, which asks you to write these numbers in order of size. So I'm going to line them up. Fill in the gaps with zeros. First column doesn't tell me anything. Second column tells me 0.61 is the biggest number. Look at the next column. It tells me that this number is the next biggest. Look at the next column. It tells me this number is the smallest, and 0.106 goes in between. That's the end of this video clip going through the answers for place value on Workpack Grade 1. Thank you.